I want to start with two experiences that I hear described so regularly in my practice that I have come to think of them as the twin signatures of aging eyes. The first is driving at night, not the driving itself, the specific moment when an oncoming car's headlights appear on the road ahead. For most people under 50, those headlights are simply 2 points of light. Bright, yes, but contained, localized. The brain processes them as light sources in a dark field, and the visual system adjusts automatically. For a significant number of people over 60, those same headlights are something else entirely. They bloom, they spread, they produce a starburst or a halo, a diffusion of light that extends well beyond where the headlights actually are, that lingers on the visual field for seconds after the car has passed, and that temporarily reduces the ability to see the road clearly. This is night glare, and for many older adults, it has quietly changed the geography of their lives, altered which routes they take, which invitations they accept, which freedoms they have stopped trying to exercise because the anxiety of driving home in the dark is no longer worth it. The second experience is the morning eye. Not always dramatic, sometimes just a persistent low-level discomfort, a grittiness behind the eyelids, a sense of rawness on the ocular surface, eyes that feel dry and irritated from the first moment they open, and that require several minutes, sometimes longer, to feel comfortable enough to read or look at a screen. A burning sensation that starts the day already behind, already managing something before a single task has been attempted. Both of these experiences, night glare and morning eye dryness, are commonly attributed to aging and left at that. A prescription check, perhaps, some lubricating drops. The general counsel to expect things to be a bit different now. What most people are not told is that both of these experiences share a common biological root, and that this root is nutritional in nature, and that a specific fruit eaten consistently in the hour before bed addresses that root through mechanisms that are increasingly well understood and increasingly well supported in the research literature. Today I want to walk you through exactly what is happening in the eye, the biology of both night glare and dry eye, and show you why a single food, eaten at the right time, addresses both conditions simultaneously through mechanisms that are elegant in their specificity. Let me begin with night glare, because the mechanism is one of the most beautiful and least discussed stories in nutritional ophthalmology. When light enters your eye, it passes through the cornea, the aqueous humor, the lens, and the vitreous before reaching the retina at the back of the eye. Under ideal conditions, this passage is clean and direct. Light rays converge precisely on the retinal surface and produce a sharp, unscattered image. The visual system processes a clear signal. Now, consider what happens when any of the optical elements in this pathway contain impurities, irregularities, or structural changes. Light does not pass cleanly through. It is scattered, deflected by microscopic particles, protein aggregates, or structural irregularities in the normally transparent tissue. And scattered light does not converge precisely on the retina. It spreads. It creates what optical physicists call forward scatter, diffuse light that falls across a wider area of the retinal surface than intended. The brain interprets this diffuse scattered light as a halo, a starburst, or a bloom around any bright light source. This is the physiological mechanism of night glare. There are two primary sites in the aging eye where this light scattering develops. The first is the crystalline lens. The lens of the eye is composed of transparent proteins called crystallins, arranged in an extraordinarily precise molecular architecture that allows light to pass through without scattering. As we age, the crystalline proteins gradually accumulate oxidative damage. They begin to misfold and aggregate, forming microscopic protein clusters within the lens that are opaque to light rather than transparent. These aggregates scatter incoming light. In their early stages, they do not substantially reduce visual acuity. You can still read the eye chart. But they are extraordinarily effective at scattering light from bright sources in a dark surround, which is precisely the condition of driving at night. The bright headlight scatters off these aggregates and spreads across the retina. Glare. This early protein aggregation in the lens, which precedes clinically diagnosable cataracts by years, is driven primarily by oxidative stress. The lens, like the retina, is under continuous oxidative challenge from light exposure. Its natural defense is a system of antioxidant enzymes and dietary antioxidants that neutralize the reactive oxygen species generated by photochemical reactions before they can damage the crystalline proteins. When that antioxidant defense is overwhelmed or inadequately supplied, when the dietary intake of the compounds the lens needs for its maintenance is insufficient, the balance shifts toward oxidative accumulation and protein aggregation begins. The second site of light scattering is the tear film. A healthy, stable tear film acts as the front optical surface of the eye. Light passes through it first, before entering any of the internal eye structures. When the tear film is smooth, uniform, and well maintained, this optical surface is clear and contributes to a sharp image. When the tear film is thin, unstable, or irregular, when it breaks up into dry patches between blinks, as occurs in dry eye disease, the front optical surface of the eye becomes irregular. Light passing through an irregular surface is scattered, and the result includes increased sensitivity to glare, halos around light sources, and fluctuating visual acuity, particularly noticeable at night when the contrast between bright light sources and dark surroundings maximizes the effect of any scatter. This means that night glare in older adults is almost always a combination of two things happening simultaneously: early lens protein aggregation from oxidative stress and tear film irregularity from dry eye disease. Both are driven by nutritional factors. Both are addressable through dietary support for the mechanisms that prevent them. Now let me walk through dry eye, because its biology is the necessary foundation for understanding the fruit I am going to describe. Dry eye disease is extraordinarily common in older adults. Estimates suggest it affects 40 to 50% of people over 65 and is significantly underdiagnosed because many people normalize the symptoms as simply what eyes feel like now. The mechanisms are multiple and intersecting, but two are particularly relevant to the nutritional intervention I want to describe. The first is meibomian gland dysfunction. The meibomian glands are a row of modified sebaceous glands embedded in the upper and lower eyelids, opening along the lid margin. Their function is to secrete a specific lipid mixture called meibum, the outermost layer of the tear film. This lipid layer is critical because it prevents the evaporation of the tear film's aqueous layer. Without an adequate lipid layer, the aqueous layer evaporates rapidly between blinks, the tear film breaks up, and the ocular surface becomes dry and irregular. An irregular optical surface that scatters light. The composition and fluidity of meibum is directly influenced by dietary fat intake, specifically by the omega-3 to omega-6 ratio in the diet. Diets adequate in omega-3 fatty acids, particularly EPA and DHA from marine sources, produce meibum with a more fluid, more homogeneous composition that spreads smoothly across the tear film, evaporates less readily, and maintains a more stable optical surface. Diets low in omega-3 and high in omega-6 produce stiffer, less fluid meibum that spreads less evenly and evaporates more quickly. The second mechanism is inflammation of the ocular surface. Chronic dry eye involves a self-amplifying inflammatory cycle on the surface of the eye. Tear hyperosmolarity from insufficient tear volume activates inflammatory signaling pathways on the corneal and conjunctival epithelium, which recruit inflammatory cells that further damage the goblet cells responsible for mucin production and the meibomian glands responsible for lipid secretion, which further reduces tear film quality, which further increases hyperosmolarity, and so on. Breaking this inflammatory cycle is central to any effective management of dry eye disease. Certain dietary antioxidants and anti-inflammatory compounds have documented effects on both the meibomian gland function and the ocular surface inflammatory cycle. And this brings us Finally, with all the necessary biological context in place, to the fruit. The fruit I want to describe today is the avocado. Before you object that avocado is technically a fruit, it is, botanically, a berry. Let me tell you why its nutritional profile maps with remarkable precision onto every biological mechanism I have described. Why it addresses lens protein oxidation, tear film lipid quality, ocular surface inflammation, and meibomian gland function through distinct, documented pathways. And why eating it consistently in the evening, 1 to 2 hours before sleep, addresses the morning dryness and night glare picture from the nutritional ground up. The first mechanism is the most direct for the night glare dimension. Avocado is one of the richest dietary sources of lutein of any commonly consumed food. A single medium avocado provides approximately 300 to 400 micrograms of lutein, a meaningful contribution toward the daily intake associated with maintaining optimal macular pigment density and lens clarity. I mentioned lutein in the context of the macular pigment in previous videos in this series, but lutein also accumulates specifically in the crystalline lens, where it provides direct antioxidant protection to the crystalline proteins. Research has consistently shown that higher lens lutein concentrations are associated with lower rates of lens protein aggregation and cataract formation. A study published in the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition found that higher dietary lutein intake was significantly associated with reduced risk of age-related nuclear cataract, the type of cataract most directly responsible for increased light scattering and night glare. The mechanism is antioxidant protection of the crystalline proteins, preventing the aggregation that produces the scattering particles. Lutein in avocado is delivered alongside the avocado's natural fat content, primarily monounsaturated oleic acid, which is essential for lutein absorption. Lutein is fat-soluble. It requires dietary fat to be absorbed from the gut, and the fat in avocado is in an ideal physical form for co-absorption with the lutein it delivers. This makes avocado a uniquely self-sufficient lutein source. The absorptive requirement is built into the food itself. The second mechanism addresses the tear film lipid quality directly. Avocado is rich in oleic acid, a monounsaturated fatty acid that research has shown is incorporated into the phospholipid composition of meibomian gland secretions. Adequate oleic acid in the diet supports the production of meibum with a more fluid, less viscous consistency that spreads more evenly across the tear film surface and provides more effective protection against aqueous layer evaporation. A more stable lipid layer means a more stable tear film. A more stable tear film means a smoother optical surface. A smoother optical surface means less scatter, less glare. Avocado also contains measurable amounts of omega-3 alpha-linolenic acid. While this is not the direct EPA and DHA that marine sources provide, it contributes to the overall fatty acid balance that influences meibum quality and ocular surface inflammation, and in combination with other dietary sources of omega-3 forms, part of the anti-inflammatory dietary environment that dry eye management requires. The third mechanism is avocado's exceptional vitamin E content. Avocado is one of the highest whole food sources of vitamin E available in any fruit or vegetable. A medium avocado provides approximately 25% of the daily reference intake. Vitamin E is a fat-soluble antioxidant that is incorporated into the membranes of cells throughout the body, including the crystalline-producing cells of the lens and the photoreceptor cells of the retina. Its presence in cellular membranes provides direct protection against the lipid peroxidation that is one of the primary mechanisms of oxidative damage to lens proteins. A landmark study, the Beaver Dam Eye Study, found that vitamin E intake was significantly inversely associated with the prevalence of nuclear cataracts. The AREDS, Age-Related Eye Disease Study, found that antioxidant nutrients including vitamin E contributed to reduced risk of age-related macular degeneration progression. The mechanism in both cases is the same, membrane-level antioxidant protection of the vulnerable cells that maintain the eye's optical clarity. The fourth mechanism is avocado's vitamin C content, which works in a synergistic antioxidant partnership with vitamin E. Vitamin E, after neutralizing a reactive oxygen species, becomes an oxidized form of itself that is no longer antioxidant active. Vitamin C regenerates vitamin E from this oxidized form back to its active antioxidant state, essentially recharging the vitamin E cycle. The aqueous humor of the eye, the fluid filling the front chamber, maintains vitamin C at concentrations 15 to 20 times higher than in blood plasma, specifically because of its critical antioxidant role in protecting the lens from the anterior side. Dietary vitamin C maintains the plasma levels that supply the aqueous humor with its extraordinary concentration. The fifth mechanism is avocado's effect on the inflammatory environment of the ocular surface. The oleocanthal and other polyphenols in avocado have documented anti-inflammatory properties. They inhibit COX-1 and COX-2 enzymes through a mechanism similar to non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs. On the ocular surface, where the chronic inflammatory cycle of dry eye is driven by these same enzymatic pathways, dietary oleocanthal and avocado polyphenols consumed consistently provide a gentle but real anti-inflammatory input that may help dampen the self-amplifying inflammatory cycle that perpetuates dry eye disease. I want to tell you about a patient I will call Miriam. Miriam was 72. She had been managing dry eye disease for approximately 4 years, using lubricating drops throughout the day and prescription cyclosporin drops that her ophthalmologist had prescribed for the inflammatory component of her condition. The drops were helping. She described her eyes as manageable during the day. But mornings were consistently difficult, dryness and irritation for the first 45 minutes after waking, and evenings, particularly after her weekly choir practice, which required her to be driven home in the dark by a member of the group because she no longer felt confident driving after 7 o'clock, were dominated by the anxiety of night glare that had worsened over the previous 2 years. She asked me whether there was anything dietary worth exploring alongside her current treatment. I described the mechanisms I have walked you through today. We discussed avocado specifically, the lutein and vitamin E for lens protection, the oleic acid for meibum quality, the anti-inflammatory polyphenols for the ocular surface cycle. I suggested half an avocado eaten in the evening, approximately an hour before sleep, consistently 5 to 6 evenings per week. I asked her to continue everything her ophthalmologist had prescribed without change, and to follow up with him at her scheduled appointment in 3 months, while paying attention to her subjective morning comfort and her experience of night glare. At 3 months, Miriam described 2 changes. The morning dryness, while not gone, was noticeably less intense and resolved more quickly. She estimated she was comfortable within 15 to 20 minutes of waking, rather than the 45 minutes that had been her norm. On the night glare dimension, she was more cautious. She said she had not tried driving at night herself, but that when her choir group members drove her home, the oncoming headlights seemed, her word was softer, less bloom, less starburst, not absent, but reduced. Her ophthalmologist at the 3-month review noted an improvement in her meibomian gland expression. The secretions were more fluid and more easily expressed than at the previous visit, which he attributed to the dietary change when she described it. He noted that nutritional support for meibomian gland function was an area he was beginning to take more seriously in his practice. Miriam has continued the evening avocado. She told me at a more recent visit that she has started occasionally driving herself to choir, not in heavy traffic and not in unfamiliar areas. But on the familiar route to a familiar place, she feels confident enough again to try. That is not a trivial outcome. That is a piece of independence quietly restored. Now let me be specific and practical about how to use this correctly. Half a medium avocado, eaten approximately 1 hour before sleep, 4 to 6 evenings per week. The riper the avocado, the higher the lutein bioavailability, Softer, ripe avocado has greater cell wall disruption that releases the fat-soluble carotenoids more readily during digestion. A firm, underripe avocado provides the same nutrients but in a form that is somewhat less accessible to absorption. Eat it in a simple preparation, sliced with a little lemon juice and a small amount of sea salt, or mashed onto a piece of whole grain bread or rye crisp bread, or eaten as part of a small evening salad. What to avoid is pairing it with dairy products. The calcium in dairy can form insoluble soaps with fatty acids in the digestive tract that reduce fat-soluble nutrient absorption. The avocado works best as a standalone snack or as part of a plant-forward evening meal. The lemon juice is not merely flavor. Vitamin C in the lemon juice, even a small amount, enhances the regeneration of the vitamin E in the avocado through the synergistic antioxidant mechanism I described. The combination of avocado's vitamin E with lemon's vitamin C in the same preparation provides a more complete antioxidant package than either alone. For people who want to amplify the tear film lipid quality dimension, adding a small portion of oily fish, sardines, mackerel, or salmon, to the same meal 2 or 3 evenings per week provides the EPA and DHA that avocado's plant-based fats do not deliver directly. The DHA and EPA from marine sources are the most direct precursors to the anti-inflammatory resolvins and protectins that the ocular surface uses to break the inflammatory cycle of dry eye. Marine omega-3 and avocado together cover the dry eye mechanism more completely than either alone. I want to address something that comes up whenever I discuss nutritional support for eye conditions. The timeline question. How long before you notice a difference? The lens antioxidant mechanism is a long-game intervention. The crystalline protein aggregation that produces light scattering develops over years, and its reversal, or more accurately, the slowing of its progression, occurs over months of consistent antioxidant provision. A meaningful reduction in night glare from the lens mechanism alone takes at minimum 3 to 6 months of consistent dietary support, and the most significant benefits are seen over 1 to 2 years. This is not the fast timeline of a pharmaceutical intervention. It is the natural timeline of biological tissue maintenance. The tear film lipid quality mechanism is faster. Meibum composition responds to dietary fatty acid changes over weeks to months, as the gland secretion is continuously replenished from circulating fatty acids. Most people who address the meibomian gland dimension through dietary omega-3 and oleic acid begin noticing improved morning tear film comfort within 4 to 8 weeks of consistent intervention. Miriam's improvement at 3 months is consistent with this timeline. Consistency is the operative word throughout. The benefit from avocado comes from the daily contribution, a small, regular deposit into the nutritional reserve that the lens and the ocular surface draw from. An occasional avocado does nothing meaningful. A consistent daily or near-daily habit over weeks and months changes the biochemical environment in which these processes occur. Let me also address the broader context of evening eye nutrition, because avocado is most effective as part of an approach that supports the ocular surface and the lens from multiple directions. Vitamin A is the nutrient most directly involved in tear production. The goblet cells of the conjunctiva, which produce the mucin layer of the tear film, are critically dependent on vitamin A for their normal function and survival. Vitamin A deficiency is the leading cause of dry eye worldwide, and subclinical vitamin A insufficiency is more common in older adults than is generally appreciated, particularly in people whose dietary variety has reduced with age. Sweet potato, carrots, eggs, and oily fish are the most practical dietary sources. Eating a vitamin A-rich food in the evening meal alongside avocado addresses the mucin layer dimension of tear film quality alongside the lipid layer dimension that avocado primarily targets. Hydration is relevant to the aqueous layer of the tear film and deserves mention. Mild dehydration, which is extremely common in older adults, who tend to have a reduced thirst sensation, reduces the aqueous component of tear production, and worsens ocular surface dryness. Drinking water consistently throughout the day and drinking a moderate glass before sleep supports the aqueous tear layer in a way that no dietary fat or antioxidant can substitute for. If your daily water intake is low, addressing it is the most immediately impactful change available to you for morning eye comfort. Blue light exposure in the hour before sleep is relevant to the oxidative load the retina and lens carry into the sleep period. The photoreceptors in lens cells are most active in their oxidative repair processes during sleep, but the degree of oxidative damage they are repairing is determined by the light exposure of the preceding day and evening. Reducing screen blue light in the pre-sleep window reduces the oxidative challenge the lens is managing overnight and allows the antioxidant support from evening nutrition to work more effectively. Let me close with the full picture. Night glare and morning eye dryness are not simply inconveniences to be managed with drops and avoided routes. They are biological signals, the eye's way of expressing that the nutritional support it needs for its maintenance and repair is insufficient. The crystalline proteins are aggregating because the antioxidant defense is inadequate. The tear film lipid layer is unstable because the dietary fat quality supporting meibomian gland function is insufficient. The ocular surface is inflamed because the anti-inflammatory nutritional inputs are not present in the quantities the tissue needs. These are addressable. Not overnight, not with a single intervention, but progressively, through consistent dietary choices that provide the lens and the ocular surface with what they need to maintain themselves over time. Half an avocado in the evening is a small habit. Its effects on night glare and morning eye dryness are not dramatic on any given night, but over weeks and months of consistent use, the lutein protecting the crystalline proteins, the oleic acid improving the meibum, the vitamin E guarding the cell membranes, and the anti-inflammatory polyphenols dampening the ocular surface inflammatory cycle accumulate into something that is genuinely, measurably different. Your eyes have been managing this alone, without adequate nutritional support, for longer than you probably realize. It is not too late to change that. Start tonight. If this was useful to you, please subscribe to the channel and share it with someone whose evenings have become smaller because of what headlights do to their vision, or whose mornings begin with eyes that need too long to feel comfortable. They deserve to know there is a nutritional dimension to this that nobody has told them about. Leave a comment below and tell me, which of these two experiences resonates more for you? The night glare or the morning dryness? I read every comment, and your answers shape exactly what I cover next in this series. I am Dr. Julian Cross. Take care of yourselves and your eyes tonight, and I will see you in the next one.